That's great.
Beautiful.
Let's go. It's the Jock Market NBA Strategy Show. That's right. For the next half hour, we're going to get you ready to win some money tonight on the Jock Market ecosystem. Geoff is in the house. I'm here as well. Tyler is producing. So the three of us combined with you out there in the Jock Market app itself, we're going to put together a couple of little angles here for you to win some money tonight. And when we look at the slate that's back, we only ask a couple of things, right? Hit that thumbs up button and make sure you're subscribed here. NBA's back full swing, my friend. So it's good to be on the show again, chatting. I'm sure we'll identify a couple of guys launching from three today as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, look, we got some big point totals out here. So there is going to be some launching. Absolutely. And we have some injury stuff too. Like that's going to help out some of our guys, I think. So, yeah, it's actually a pretty interesting, like 5-game slate. You can make some cases, I think, for some of the big name players who, sometimes I like to avoid on Jock Market, but there's definitely, Jokic and Giannis are both on the slate. So, and they're both in pretty good setups, I think. So, you could definitely pay up for some guys, but injury stuff and good matchups on this 5-game or two.
So just looking at this kind of from a big picture standpoint, because we do talk about depending on how many games there are on a slate, we talk about the guys at the top, how much we're targeting them, especially how popular they may be. And our projections are free for you on Awesemo. That's what we're using here, as well as what's going on with Jock Market. So I am curious from you, just more of an overall standpoint here, look at it, Geoff, is there a guy or maybe two that you anticipate to be right there at the top with our projections? We have the two that you mentioned, Jokic and Giannis, and then everybody dips a little bit, that you're thinking you're going to fade more and stay away from more. Maybe all of the public heat on DeMar DeRozan is enough for you to think that he may have a down game, or maybe it is one of the top guys that you think just from a not necessarily great ROI standpoint, or simply because the public is going to drive their IPO price up too much.
Yeah, that's the perfect way to put it too. I kind of feel like we've hit that status with DeMar DeRozan. Like even in his last start, it felt like people just, Levine was back and people just weren't really buying in yet. And then he just went for another, whatever he went, like 37 points. So he scored a point per minute. And that's kind of been his pace over the last little bit. And, it's a big point total there. It's a close spread, but I think you got to sit back and look at this slate and just, people are going to start paying. It's just another good game means more eyes are on DeMar DeRozan.
Yep.
I think this is a slate where you go the extra notch up and you really go for Giannis because, Jokic is actually top in our projections, but again, Jokic is always tops and he's going to cost you the most. Like there's no doubt about it. I think that the Giannis is the guy who will come in a little bit cheaper than that. And I don't think there'll be as big a gap between, Antetokounmpo and DeMar as there probably should be in this spot. Maybe even like you could throw like Dejounte Murray, who's coming off a massive game in there too. So I really like Giannis today. The projections, like I said, you do him second, but he's been a really good form of late. He's got, 3 of his last 4 games, 65 fantasy points or more. He's been really productive just for Jock Market. He's got 3 first-place finishes in his last 7 games. And, look, Brooklyn does not defend the paint well. It's a great chance. I think a double-double is probably going to show up here. And, Kyrie's back, and I think Brooklyn just has to keep this game close. Like, the only thing worrisome about Jokic or Giannis is the blowout potential. And I think you have more blowout potential with Denver at home. I actually don't know why that spread. I kind of like the Nuggets tonight, by the way, but to cover that, if we're getting the bet
alert.
Yeah. I think the Bucks are just, I think the Bucks Nets has a better chance of staying close. I really do. So I'm fine with paying up for Giannis, which is a little bit of a change for me because I generally kind of shoo people away from these top players, but I think you're kind of just seeing in that top section, you're gonna see a little bit of like softer price there in the middle with the Bucks dude. So
yeah, that's a good place to start though, because you open up that door about that game, especially because you think it's going to be closer than maybe the line indicates, right? Last I saw 9.5, maybe up to 10. Some books are going to have them off right now simply because of some injury stuff that's going on. But with that said, I'm interested now, outside of the obvious in Kyrie Irving, who else on Brooklyn is helping to keep that game close? Because maybe we can get in on a Seth Curry at a lower fair IPO price, somebody other than Kyrie, with the assumption that, Irving's not dropping 55 tonight in Milwaukee just to keep their team close.
Yeah, no. And look, like Seth Curry, absolutely. You can go back to him. I think it's a good spot for the role player. I would even go further down. I think Patty Mills, Bruce Brown, probably in good spots. Patty Mills is obviously like high volatility, but again, we're talking Jock Market. So if you're getting cheap shares of a Brooklyn player, that's okay. It's not going to cost you much. And if Patty Mills starts heating up from 3-point land and this game does stay close, or the nice thing about targeting like a guy a little bit further down the depth chart is these guys are probably going to get minutes anyways on Brooklyn, right? So one of them, even in a blowout loss, is probably going to have a decent game. So I would even go further down than Curry. I think targeting some of these rotational players like Patty Mills is fine in this spot. You can even throw LaMarcus Aldridge maybe in there. So. Oh, muted.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
The flip side would be that, and let's go on this game script here, right? That Brooklyn comes out, this game is close. It's not the anticipated blowout here. It's either going to be Milwaukee pulling away with this, or there's going to be enough reason to keep starters out there for the rest of the game So the obvious, of course, would be, the supporting cast with Holiday and Middleton around Giannis, but there are other guys too. I mean, Bobby Portis is a guy that I was looking at from a 3-point prop standpoint in this game, especially if it's going to be closer. So how can we attack that, Geoff, kind of from an in-game standpoint with the Bucks, with the assumption, which I'm totally on board with, that this game is close at the start and maybe even Brooklyn comes out, steals a quarter, or keeps it close in the first quarter?
Yeah, and I think if you're playing for that scenario, the other guy I would target is Portis. Absolutely. Okay. And again, it comes down to kind of just matchup. This is more of just a matchup-based opinion, but I think Portis, with the ability to rack up points at a decent rate. I mean, he's probably not going to go for like 30, but he could. And it's more of just like the matchup with Brooklyn in a rebounding scenario. I mean, again, weak rebounding team. I think a guy like Bobby Portis is in a good spot to take advantage of that. And Bobby Portis is just a good fantasy producer, right? I mean, he's typically like over a fantasy point per minute guy. I think with this slate too, the way it's breaking down, like not many people are going to go deep on the Milwaukee Bucks roster. Yeah, there'll definitely be people who are buying into Giannis, but like how much, sort of just, with where you're allocating your resources, I'm not sure how many people want to necessarily play for this to be a close game. And look, it is a bit of a risk. We're talking about it like, it's probably going to be closer than people think, but it could still be a blowout. So, in those scenarios, there's almost less risk with Portis because let's say he plays 28 minutes, you're probably still going to get him for a good price. And if the Bucks blow out, he's probably very efficient in those 28 minutes because he's probably helping towards the win. So Portis in a lot of ways is almost like a lower risk than Antetokounmpo for this. So if you did want to just target one Bucks player because they have a huge implied team total, I think Portis is almost like a better option in a lot of ways, but I don't mind doubling down on the Bucks here. It's just, obviously the more bucks you get on any sort of IPO or any card with Jock Market or in your portfolio, whatever you want to call it, right? It's upping the risk. You're definitely in a scenario where you could see some of these guys like maybe Giannis only plays 30 minutes. So just keep that in mind.
I'll tell you, we have him projected a fair IPO price on our free projections on Awesemo. Geoff, Portis at $6.30, workable number with that projection at 28.53. I feel even better now about my 3+ made threes for Portis at plus 190 tonight. So everything is working in the right direction here. This is a good thing here. There are a couple of other games you mentioned at the start, though, with some high totals. You love the Nuggets covering that line. So let's look at this. Do you think this is going to be tight, close, and Denver pulls away, maybe similar to how we talked about that previous game, or is this just Zach gets blown out of the building?
So, I have a little bit of a feeling that this is like a kind of a letdown spot for Sacramento. You mentioned it. Obviously, they're playing on the back-to-back. Like you have guys like Sabonis played 37 minutes. De'Aaron Fox played his usual 35+ minutes. Harrison Barnes, maybe not good. He's up there too, actually. So, you have all these Sacramento players. They played big minutes in the first game, and they kept it competitive, but I mean, I don't know. Again, I'm a little surprised to see this line where it is. I feel like Denver at home coming off that they already have the first win in the bag. This is kind of spot where a little bit, the slightly better depth that Denver has and just the star power, I feel like it starts to win out. So, I mean, in that scenario, again, we should be talking about who on Sacramento could benefit, right? If this one turns into a bit of a laugher. I mean, I still think you'll see their starters play big minutes. They don't really have what you call a huge bench, but we could go down. I mean, Justin Holiday perhaps gets a little bit more run, a little bit more free shooting. I think you can even see Jeremy Lamb is a guy who's obviously, can light it up when he starts to get hot and gets a few more minutes. So you can think about players like that from Sacramento. I'm not necessarily going to go big on any of their players. De'Aaron Fox, a guy like Target. He's got good minutes, but I'll probably stay away from paying up from anyone from Sacramento. Their side of it is really, do you want to take a shot with someone further down the bench? I don't know, Mo Harkless maybe, but I don't think you necessarily even have to do that. I mean, Lamb is interesting, again, just from the standpoint of if he gets a little bit more rotational minutes and stuff. I mean, he can heat up in Curry and he'll cost you nothing. So, but not too big on the Sacramento side. Yeah,
I'm with you, man. The blowout factor too. I was just looking at it and just, it's really tough to figure out how fast this thing's going to get out of hand. And maybe and I don't even know how high percentage of a strategy this is, Geoff, but maybe you could target somebody like Fox. Maybe you could target somebody like Barnes and hope that they are the guy. And again, think about how narrow of a spectrum you're working with here, but hope that they are the guy, you know where I'm going, right? That they're the guy who's providing the lone offense for a team that's getting their ass kicked. And then you could sell immediately before halfway through the second quarter.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we always got to think about that from a jock market perspective. Like you can play the flow of the game, right? Like, if you don't want to buy in on any of the Sacramento guys, well, if the game starts to get out of hand real quick, then you can pick up shares of these bench guys, right? So because they're probably going to be playing a lot in the second half. So always a good thing to remind people again, if you're new to the format, you can buy and sell shares during the games on Jock Market. If you're new to it or whatever, or just as a reminder, I mean, yeah, absolutely. And the same on Denver. Like if you are buying into Jokic and it's starting to look like, this thing is going to pushing 20 plus points or something soon, just dump him because you maybe get lucky and he plays more of the fourth quarter, but you could also be in a scenario where, he just tops out and then you're just losing money the whole fourth quarter, basically. So.
Absolutely. That's something to always keep an eye on. The window that you're working with may not be as wide open, especially in a blowout scenario if you're riding with the losing team. So as Geoff laid out, there's some really cool, intricate details that are here with Jock Market, but they're not hard. They're not difficult to kind of apply. That's why we give you that deposit match right away. Awesemo, AWE, SEMO will match that first deposit up to $50. It's easy. You can see here Tyler's putting together everything behind us as well as we go through it. There's the third game with that super high total tonight is in Chicago, and it's DeMar DeRozan and everybody else on there versus Ja. The Grizzlies are in town here. So is there, and we talked about both of those guys really at the top, and if DeRozan keeps cooking and just keeps doing what he's been doing over this recent stretch, it may be worth it if his IPO is less than a Giannis or even a Jokic, as you just laid out there with the blowout capability.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's all really about price with DeMar DeRozan right now. I mean, I think we know. I mean, look, Levine's back and nothing changed. I mean, he still got his shots off. He was out there for 35 plus minutes. So I mean, this is going to be a faster paced game. It's got a close point spread, and it's probably just gonna you're going to see DeMar push for another big usage game. He doesn't get you obviously the rebounds and assists and stuff that other people do. So if he ever does go cold, this will obviously he'll cool off in a big way, but. You just looking at his Jock Market returns, man. I mean, it's 5 straight games with positive ROIs, but you can also see the IPOs. Like you're not getting him for anywhere near under $10. You're really barely getting him for under $11 anymore. So just be aware. I mean, when this point streak cools off, and maybe it doesn't, maybe it just cools off for a game. I mean, it's gonna be a pretty ugly night, for your Jock Market points. That's why I would just prefer to just pay up for one of the bigger dudes tonight. But I mean, it's a really good spot. I can't sit here and say, oh yeah, it's going to be terrible for DeMar tonight. There's really nothing that says that. It's right. Memphis. It's a huge point total. It's a couple faster paced teams. You'll probably see him score 30 plus points again. I mean, that's just what he does. So, going down the lineup, I don't hate maybe thinking about, Vukovic in this spot, who's just a really, obviously throughout his career, just a really efficient fantasy producer, can go for 50, 60 points on any night. I mean, again, we have a big point spread here. There's multiple ways that Chicago can get there. So I would prefer going for Vukovic. And again, I mean, it just boils down to price and what you're going to be paying. I think that, Vukovic's IPO is going to be a lot easier to get in. And if he starts well, I mean, you could dump him early too. Or you could try and get shares in game, but he's been pretty good. 5 of his last 7 games, positive ROIs too, coming off a couple slow games, but we like that. Probably going to get to see his IPO, under $10. So
do you like this game close?
Yeah. I mean, I don't really have any reason to think it wouldn't be. I mean, last time I checked, the spread was really, it's 2.
Right. Chicago's a home dog, right?
Yeah. The home dog for the Bulls. So, I mean, I could definitely see Chicago pulling this game out. I mean, I think Levine is back. You know, again, I kind of don't mind the matchup for the Bulls, but I don't think I'm not in on a Memphis blowout or anything like that. I definitely think it'll be close.
So I asked that because I think that there may be, and maybe it's recency bias that we can take advantage of, or maybe it's just how this game plays out from beyond just Ja Morant, right? Because that's going to be the easy call for a lot of people on Jock Market and beyond here for this team. But the two guys that I want to take a look at here with you, and it used to be from three, but I think we need to put Jaren Jackson 3 props just in the back burner for the time being. But still, I mean, the productivity is through the roof. And then the Rook over there in Zaire, I mean, we have to talk about him as well. I know he had that big game in that loss against Minnesota, so it's not all recency bias, but it's just trying to target guys because I feel like Morant right there is tier 1. You're going to have people in that Brooks Bane kind of range there. And then even if you can target somebody like Jackson and maybe Williams, you can get around that heavy public play on the other guys.
Yeah. And I mean, I almost prefer, I think from this game, we almost should have talked about Memphis first, because I think I do prefer paying for Morant.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, again, Memphis is coming in as the favorites. They have a slightly biggest implied team total. And, the scoring, like I do think the scoring for Chicago will balance out a little bit with Levine back in. So if you're looking at the studs in this game and you really want, exposure, I mean, I don't think starting with him is a bad idea, but yeah, I mean, there's always seems to be, and Memphis is an interesting team because it does always seem to be someone stepping up, but it can be a little bit difficult to target, right? Like, I mean, I Zaire Williams, I mean, I'd probably be a little bit cautious in going back to the well there. Especially with just rookies. I mean, coming off one good game, they tend to be more inconsistent. What about DeAnthony Melton? I mean, he's pretty efficient too for a guy who doesn't get a ton of big minutes, right? I mean, this is the kind of spot we like those guys. I mean, if the pace is going to be up, it's a good matchup. I think grabbing a piece of Melton here is fine. I mean, I like Jaren Jackson and I like Desmond Bane too, but I mean, Melton's going to cost you nothing to get a piece of. And I'm expecting a close game. I think you'll see this one potentially even go over the point total. So yeah, I think you can go down the rosters there and Melton probably stands out as my pick there on Memphis anyways.
All right. So a couple of other games here we can touch into it. Again, not as high, super high total. Although Raptors in Atlanta is definitely a decent one. Spurs Heat, this thing has changed. Spurs are down the top 2 players there. So Miami, that line is now bumped up to 10.5. and probably may even go higher by the time we hit tip tonight at 8 Eastern. So those, and again, you've got that Wizards-Cavs game. It's at 205. There was that was the last one there. So that's super low. Yeah. We can kind of end on that one because look, even if they get to 205, somebody out there is going to be scoring points and putting up numbers. Well, it's just, I'm sorry.
No, and Cleveland is super banged up, right?
Yes.
Like they have no backcourt right now. I mean, Rondo's out. So yeah, that there is some opportunity there as well. Absolutely.
So let's look at that other game let's get to these final 3 games. We can bounce around and if it's the Spurs, Heat, or the Raptors. So the Raptors are interesting, right? They're just flattened last night, right? And here's where I'm just going back and forth. It's the second leg of a back-to-back following this long All-Star break where I think that's where you start to feel like, give me a couple more days when these guys are getting back into rhythm. So if they weren't playing a back-to-back, I wouldn't worry about it, but they are playing the second leg now of a back-to-back, and it is fresh off of that longer break. So I don't know how long these legs will last for Toronto in the second half. On the other hand, there's no way, Geoff, it could look as bad and as ugly as it did last night against the Hornets.
Yeah, I mean, I like targeting teams in spots like this, especially like decent teams with starters who are going to be out there because Toronto just like they don't really change. Like their starters are just they're minute eaters. I mean, they're all out there, and I mean, so I like targeting teams in these situations coming off blowout losses where their guys didn't play that much before, and you have everybody on the roster for Toronto coming off like lower minutes games, and then you also have OJ Anunoby out, which I mean, again, I think it really opens up opportunities and. And maybe those opportunities kind of were a little bit sketchy in the last game, but you're going to see that play out where some guys really benefit from the added time. And I mean, we'll go right to our guy here, which is Gary Trent Jr. I mean, I see no reason not to go back here. 29 minutes, He only attempted 4 3-pointers in his last game. That's a really slow day at the office for him. He should be itching to get back out there. And again, it comes down to matchup. Atlanta's easily a bottom 10 team in terms of opposing 3-pointers, opposing 3-point field goal percentage allowed. So, I see this as a great spot to get on Gary Trent Jr. I know I talked a little bit about him this morning in a video, and that's my first inclination. Scotty Barnes is going to be out there more too. He's played 32 minutes now in a couple straight games, but I think Gary Trent Jr. gives you the better upside. I mean, Scotty Barnes is fine, but if you're looking for a guy who can get you 50, it's Gary Trent. I mean, there's no, I don't think it's even a choice between those two. So, if you're not paying up for Siakam or Van Vliet, and I don't think that you necessarily have to avoid those guys, but Gary Trent would be my first pick from this game.
Yeah, I love it, man. Anybody on the other side? And, you have the obvious clearly in the monster that's Trae Young. But here, especially if you like this game to be close and hitting or even over that point total, there are going to be some opportunities for some other guys here in Atlanta. Yeah,
Atlanta is a team that I sometimes just forget about after Trae Young, because it just feels like it is so centric around him. But some other guys have really been producing. Gallinari's been a pretty good value here over this last little stretch. I mean, it's been pretty consistent from him. And again, it's just like most of these other games, not all of them on the slate, but we've got a close point spread. You've got a Toronto team who, like you said, they just got waxed their last time out. I'd be pretty shocked if this game didn't at least come down, end up within, maybe even within the spread. I mean, 5, which is 5 points right now. I think you will see the Raptors come out and make a pretty concerted effort. That's just been the sort of tradition under this of this team too. They're a little bit inconsistent, and they don't have the flashy depth that some other teams do, but they generally will come out and kind of put in the effort. So I think it's a good spot to go down and take a shot with a guy like Gallinari who should be seeing significant minutes. Bogdanovic has been good too. I mean, both these guys really. So Bogdanovic, over 20 points in 4 of his last 5 games. So he's been carrying better usage as well. Little interesting. I mean, I definitely, you can always pay up for Trae Young, but we've kind of already gone over some plays. I think I prefer Morant to him. So Atlanta, I'm definitely looking at these secondary scorers for once, because normally I don't go down too far down their list at all.
Jimmy Butler, just to kind of move around the final couple of minutes here, Geoff. Jimmy Butler is going to be clearly the top guy, but with so many guys out on San Antonio, it just feels like this is blowout city happening here. So again, I don't know if this is back to that Denver mentality where you have a narrow window for Miami starters.
Yeah. It's, I wanted to I was actually ready to kind of make a case for Jimmy Butler tonight, because he didn't play so well in his last game, but it definitely felt like a spot. I think it was his last back-to-back that he played. He went nuts on the tail end of it. He went crazy. So I really kind of was ready to make a case here, but with Murray out now, it's definitely, the risk is heightened. I mean, I think the upside is maybe even better, but the risk is heightened that you're just not going to see him play that much. So I don't really know what to do with the Heat. I don't have a recommendation. Tyler Hero also played well last night. And I mean, maybe they just switch off, but you're kind of just playing a little bit more of a guessing game. If I was going to go with anyone there, it would be Butler. He's the guy who can really light it up for you there. So yeah, it's an interesting spot. Not necessarily one that I feel is necessary, but they're big favorites, right? I mean, we always say in these situations, someone's going to score the points. So I think Butler has some potential. Just a little bit more risk factor there, though, with Murray and just the Spurs being the Spurs, basically. So
you mentioned Cleveland, though, some value there with that backcourt kind of decimated. So let's kind of end on that. Just the low total. We try and stay away from those, but again, that doesn't mean that you can't find value on the floor.
Yeah. CD Osman is a player who people just seem to gravitate towards in these situations. And I think I would make a pretty good case for him too. I mean, Brandon Goodwin is the guy who is going to be getting the minutes, obviously, at the point. I mean, he's basically their only point guard. And I really don't hate either of these players. So, it's just Goodwin. We just have such a small sample size, but I mean, I think I'll probably just let other people take Osman again. I mean, he's just not that great a fantasy producer. I think you've just got to roll with Goodwin here. And even if it gets up to, where the IPO is getting up there, I mean, he was over a fantasy point per minute in his last start. We've seen him get a few bigger minutes, and he's kind of produced in all of those opportunities lately. So I would just roll with Goodwin, especially with the matchup with Washington. Like, I mean, they're rolling Neto and Ish Smith. Ish Smith played like 60 minutes last night. Like, this is So that's the other factor here. I mean, if this was a tougher matchup, I would be probably scared off these guys but you've got a Washington team who played a ton of minutes. You've got Goodwin, who's given us like a pretty decent sample size of being an efficient producer. And then you've got he's not exactly going up against studs here. So I think Goodwin is fine. I buy in there. The minutes should be good. It could be a good sell high player too. I mean, if he starts off, and you're just like, okay, well, we've gotten a run out of him. You could sell because, I mean, he's still like the fourth, on the depth chart for a reason. Yep. But from what I've seen, I think that's where you go tonight with Cleveland.
Love it. Anybody else you want to get out here? The MMA boys are up next, so I don't want to go late and get put in a chokehold or anything like that. So,
I mean, you could definitely, look at other dudes on Cleveland too. That was the only other thing I think I was going to mention. I mean, I don't mind Evan Mobley coming for a bounce back game. I think he kind of burned people his last time out, two of his last 3 times out. But again, much like some of these other players, I mean, even like just a Gary Trent, I mean, he will pop up with 50 points. So I do like Cleveland tonight. I know the point total's low, but I think that getting exposure to Mobley won't cost you as much as you think. So.
Awesome. All right. Another one in the books here. We'll keep doing this with Jock Market as we keep going down the stretch here in the NBA. At the Fantasy Grind for Geoff, at Shander Show for me. Thanks to Tyler. Thanks to you out there. Hit that thumbs up button, please, if you haven't already. And look, make sure you're subscribed. This channel, the Odd Shopper channel as well. MMA Live Before Lock coming up right now. Don't go anywhere.